Hey, so I wanted to make a video kind of defending Project Veritas. They have done some pretty weak investigations. Most of them are very, very strong, which is primarily every investigation they've done against the mainstream media. But some of them have been rather weak. Particularly I believe it's 4 parts actually, on Pfizer. Part 1 was here, Part 2 was here, and Part 3 was here. I forget what Part 4 is, but the point is, they actually got a lot of criticism for these. Because, well, primarily the criticism was not necessarily the information in the video, but rather where the information came from. Because a lot of people got the impression of like, oh, they're gonna get some terrible recordings from like the head of Pfizer and that kind of thing, right? And then you watch the video and you find out that it's just a completely random employee. But here's the thing. Although they got a lot of criticism for that, and I do understand why people criticize them, because you would naturally think to yourself, it's just an employee. Who cares what an employee thinks, right? I mean, that's just natural. When you're trying to expose corruption in a company, you want to hear the CEO saying some fucked up shit, right? Which is what they get on the mainstream media all the time. But when you just hear it from some random employee who happens to work for the company, you're kind of like, what's the big deal? This is just an employee. We don't know how long they've worked there. Their words are not impactful. Since it is a random employee, they don't know what the CEOs think because they're not in connection with the CEO, obviously. But the thing is, that does not necessarily mean that the investigation and the words of that employee are all of a sudden wrong or invalid. I do understand why people think that. But I want to explain to people why it's not as bad as you think it is. It's not as amazing as some people think it is either, but it's not as bad as a lot of people think. You see, they go in and get hidden recordings of everybody. But the thing is, there's a lot of recordings that you just can't get. You can't. It doesn't matter how secretive you are. There are some recordings you just cannot get. And like the CEO of Pfizer is one of them. Do you have any idea how difficult it would be for a random Project Veritas journalist to befriend the CEO of Pfizer and then catch him on hidden recording? It's borderline impossible, if not actually impossible. So what they do instead is they find employees who say some pretty fucked up shit. And again, people think like it's a random employee. I don't care what they think. This proves nothing. But the thing is, what you're missing is that Project Veritas is not necessarily trying to prove things with the words of the random employee. What they're actually doing is just showing you the mindset of people who work for that company. I understand, and I think even James O'Keefe understands, that random employee does not actually define the overall mindset of the entire company or the CEO. I think he's fully aware of that. The goal here is not to discredit the entire company as a whole, or the CEO, or head office, or whatever you want to call it. The goal is to say, look at this guy. Yes, he's a low-level employee, but look at him. Look at the kind of things he does. Look at what he believes in. Look at what he's saying. This guy is clearly completely out of his fucking mind. And what we're trying to convey to you is that if this guy thinks this way, imagine what other people think. Is it possible that he thinks the same way as other employees, management, maybe even the CEO? That's what they're trying to bring to your attention. It's not just, hey, here's an employee. He thinks the exact same thing as the CEO. Therefore, the whole company's fucked up. No, what they're trying to do is teach you to have doubt and show you that if this particular person is a whack job, like the guy in part 2, that guy's fucking crazy. What they're trying to show you is that if he's completely out of his mind, perhaps maybe I, as a viewer, should reconsider what I think of the whole company and put some more thought or research or caution into what the entire company believes in, what the CEO may or may not believe in, or push, or support. That's the thing. See, a lot of people just kind of look at these investigations like the Part 3 Pfizer one and go, wow, this research is shit. Part 2 is a random employee, Part 1 is a random nurse, and they think like this is nothing. There's nothing here. But again, what people need to understand with a lot of Project Veritas things is that it's not about just that employee. It's you take what the employee says and think to yourself, I wonder what the rest of the company is doing. It's to get you thinking, not necessarily answer the question from, boom, that random employee. It's to get you thinking of what the other people in that company might be doing, saying, believing in, or supporting. That's what they're really doing in investigations like that anyway. Of course, when they do investigations into like the mainstream media, they have gotten CEOs like Jeff Zucker of CNN to say pretty fucked up things. And aside from Jeff Zucker, it is mostly employees or just CNN straight up lying like they always do. That kind of stuff you can rely on because it's in your face, and the employees at CNN, not just the CEO, but the employees are also at fault because they're the ones who are on the news and lying to your face. The CEO is just the one directing them to do that. It's like Hitler. And another thing for all of you people who say things like, just catching a random employee saying something random is not really impactful, while you are right, try to compare it to what you see in the mainstream media. Now, you've been brainwashed by the mainstream media, especially the leftist media, that everything they say is true. They can lie to you about whatever they want. They can brainwash you into thinking that everything that's true is a conspiracy theory. You're just straight up brainwashed by the media. But if you look at the media in a literal, objective sense, they don't even do the basic shit that Project Veritas does. On the high end, Project Veritas catches CNN and CEOs. On the low end, they catch some random employee saying something fucked up. But even on the low end, they're still doing more than the mainstream media would ever do. The mainstream media just simply makes things up, lies, and doesn't show their sources. The mainstream media would never even go as far as showing some crazy employee saying something. They would just simply twist the words of anybody and go, look, that guy's right-wing, so he's automatically a bad person. That's nothing. So even on the low end of Project Veritas, they still do better than anything the mainstream media will ever do. Because news organizations like CNN, MSNBC, and all of them, they're fake, they lie, they actively know they do. And as far as sources go, what do they have for the most part? Independent fact checkers on social media who are literally paid off to lie. Snopes, who people actually rely on, has been caught actively lying and faking their, what they say is true or false. They are literally paid off by leftist sources to just be like, did Biden touch a child? This is mostly false. Even though there's videos of him literally groping kids in the White House back when he was VP of Obama. But because they want to hide it, you can't really say hide because it's not hidden, but because they want to deny it, they'll literally put on Snopes that it's false. And by the way, what I just said, that was not hypothetical. That is actually on Snopes. Go look it up yourself right now. And that's just one example of thousands where Snopes will lie because they are no more or less paid off than a left-wing SJW journalist giving a fake critique to a movie on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay? So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Project Veritas is always perfect, but their goal is to do better than the media, and on investigations where they're just talking to some random employee, the goal is not to expose the whole company because of that employee. Their goal is to show you that if this employee is crazy, you should cast doubt or at least ask questions for the rest of the company that they're exposing. That's their goal, and I hope people understand and give Project Veritas a little more credit, even when the investigation is not as impactful as they usually are for investigations like Expose Pfizer Part 2, because I understand that was a weak one, but it's stronger than you think it is. See you later.